Hey, what's going on? It is yours truly, Timothy J. Jones. Thank you for stopping by the State of the NFL podcast. I ask that you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. This is a channel where we talk about some of the hottest topics in all of the NFL. Hey, what's going on, sports fans? My name is TJ Jones. Welcome to another edition of the State of the NFL podcast, where we talk about some of the hottest topics in all of the National Football League. Before we get started, I ask that you hit the like and subscribe button. It helps the State of the NFL podcast to grow. And check out some of the previous episodes we've done so far. We're going to be talking about some top stories around the National Football League, but unfortunately, we got to start with one that ends in absolute tragedy. This took place on Monday, July 28 at 6:30 p.m. A gunman identified as 27-year-old Shane Tamura, armed with a M4 rifle and wearing a bulletproof vest, attacked the office tower at 345 Park Avenue, the building housing the NFL New York headquarters and other firms as well. So a little bit of a backstory. This young man clearly was mentally disturbed. They found in his car, they found some mental medication, as well as just a bunch of magazine clips, and other things that just doesn't make any sense whatsoever, man. This was a guy who played high school football and said that he had CTE. He drove from Las Vegas all the way to New York and decided that he wanted to go into the NFL office, but he took the wrong elevator. This could have ended very, very, it ended terribly. Don't get me wrong, but I'm talking about more casualties could have taken place if he would have got into the NFL headquarters. 4 individuals lost their lives, including an off-duty officer, a security guard, a woman that worked nearby location, and another civilian end up losing their lives. It's unfortunate that this situation happened. Apparently, this young man had a grievance with the National Football League. He pretty much said that his issues with this mental illness that he had started when he was playing football. My prayers and my thoughts go out to all of the family members of individuals that have lost their lives in this senseless tragedy. It's unfortunate that this young man could not get the help that he needed. It's also even more unfortunate that he felt like he had to go down to downtown Manhattan to the NFL headquarters and let off some steam. I wish that I had a word or a way that I can just sum all this up, but I can't. It's unfortunate that we live in a world today that it just seems like, situations are sometimes just senseless and they just go way beyond our understanding. Mental health is a real thing, and it's very important if you're dealing with something to make sure that you talk to someone, somebody that you trust. Sometimes we try to bottle those things in. We try to handle those situations on our own, and sometimes we even try to medicate ourselves, but you have to make sure that you are letting it out, man, trusting in somebody that that is not going to put it out there, and just be open and be real. This whole situation that happened in Manhattan, I think is going to really change security measures, especially in that downtown area, and especially in the NFL office. Like I said, this could have been really, really brutal, more brutal than it actually was if he would have got to that office. It's fortunate that that he didn't get into that office, especially him being so upset with the National Football League. So may all of the individuals that were affected by this, first off, may the victims rest in peace, and my prayers go out to their families. It's unfortunate that we have to start off a podcast talking about something that's just absolutely senseless. But look, man, don't believe in your heart of hearts that nobody cares about how you feel about certain situations. A lot of us wait until it's too late to try to address some of these situations. And, I'm not saying that you would stoop to these type of measures, but, sometimes like we wait too long in order for us to try to handle certain situations and, try to, get ourselves together in the right headspace. I just wish that this young man would have thought about maybe seeking help or even trusting in somebody before he decided to drive thousands of miles to end the lives of 4 people. But let's go ahead and move on the best way that we can from one situation to another. We're going to be talking about Christian Wilkins. Christian Wilkins, man, my goodness. The last couple of days have been absolutely insane. Just hearing about all of the different stories about Christian Wilkins. I think that Christian Wilkins is a very, very talented player. I think as of right now, according to sources, the New England Patriots have interest in him. But his bizarre locker room behavior could be a cause to pause for the Patriots as well as other NFL teams. According to many reports, mostly by Adam Schefter, he's the one that's leading this charge here. He talked about how Christian Wilkins kissed one of his teammates on the forehead, and it just made his teammate feel extremely uncomfortable. There were reports where you had players reporting to HR, human resources, for the Las Vegas Raiders about Christian Wilkins' behavior. And then we hear in this situation about playing with a teammate's feet. I don't know how, I don't know how accurate that report is, but the kissing on the forehead and some of the erratic, insane, very, very weird behavior of Christian Wilkins has been on display. Christian Wilkins has always been a guy that, to me, is that type of player that tries to play head games with his opponents. I've seen him pull his opponent's towels. I've seen him try to rip out mouthpieces, like just try to get under their skin. And I don't have any issue with that. Sometimes you like to play the mental game. Football is indeed a mental game, but I don't think guys want to play the games that Christian Wilkins is playing, and you don't want to make your teammates feel uncomfortable. And you may be playing, but sometimes, man, everybody don't want to play, right? And sometimes people want to play today, they don't want to play tomorrow. And Christian Wilkins, it seemed like he took it a little bit too far, and it made people very, very uncomfortable. Now, there are reports that are saying that this could have led to him being released. The fact that the Raiders organization was just tired of the antics and just rather cut their losses, and this was their way out. The fact that he wasn't rehabbing properly, when it comes to his contract, the verbiage. So maybe that was their way out. Of course, he is going to lose $36 million. Of course, he is going to try to appeal that. I mean, why wouldn't you? I mean, who wants to lose $36 million? But I just hope that Christian Wilkins take the opportunity. I hope that he gets his money, number one. I hope he gets his money. But number two, I just hope that he understands that you got to tone it down a little bit. Like, it's okay to be, the funny guy inside the locker room, crack jokes, etc. But this type of behavior, this kind of stuff right here, man, get you in fights, and you can really get hurt. Guys don't play like that, right? And then we also have seen some footage of some weird behavior, on top of a pile and grabbing guys, in inappropriate places. Christian Wilkins has got to wake up. Like, you lost $36 million as of right now. You're going to end up losing more money because teams aren't going to want to put up with the nonsense. And right now, you're 30 years old. You're still, in your prime right now. And, a team would probably rather go with a younger interior lineman if you continue to act this way. So I just hope that this is a wake-up call for Christian Wilkins, in the process of losing his money, losing his premier spot as one of the cornerstone defensive players for the Raiders. Is, despite the fact that he went down in week 5 and he started the season on the PUP list, he still had high expectations for a guy like Wilkins. The Raiders did, I'm pretty sure. So hopefully he'll be able to bounce back and learn from this situation, because it'll be unfortunate for a guy like Christian Wilkins with all the talent in the world to not be able to exercise those talents because he can't get out of his own way. Go ahead and move on. Going to talk a little bit about a tight end that I know quite well, covering the Coastal Carolina Chanticleers over the last few years. And this is tight end Isaiah Likely. Now, very, very scary stuff took place at the Baltimore Ravens training camp. He was carted off the field with an ankle injury. And, it looked very, very serious. And he's going to be missing a few weeks. And, according to head coach John Harbaugh, Isaiah Likely was starting to come on and really emerge as a threat on the Baltimore Ravens offense. You look at Mark Andrews, as talented as he is, he's still one of the best tight ends in the league, in my opinion. But you can slowly see Isaiah Likely starting to, rev it up just a tad bit, especially in the absence of Mark Andrews when he was dealing with his injuries. I'm just looking at some of his stats, and this is from last season. He played in 16 games. He had 42 receptions, 477 yards, and 6 touchdowns. That's a huge jump, from his rookie season. This was a guy to me, that Lamar Jackson counted on, especially like in a red zone and when he needed to play down the field. I liked Isaiah Likely. I think that the Baltimore Ravens like him a lot. I can see him being that next top tight end that they pay and be a force on their offense. I like the Baltimore Ravens. I have nothing but respect for the organization, the way that they conduct themselves, like their ownership, their management team. They do a really good job at finding guys in the draft and developing them in their system. It gets to a point where, they have so many different guys and they do so well at drafting. They have to let go some guys that with a lot of potential. I can think about they were the team that ended up signing at first Will Lutz, the star kicker, for the Denver Broncos and, also with the Saints at one time. And they end up releasing him and letting him go because they had Justin Tucker, who ended up being arguably the best kicker of his generation. All things considered as of right now, he's still one of the best, even though he's dealing with some things as we speak. But all I'm saying is the Baltimore Ravens are a really good, solid football team, and Isaiah Likely is starting to come into his own. Hopefully it's not anything too serious where he will have to miss a substantial amount of time going into the regular season. If you miss some preseason games, you want those reps. But I'm pretty sure that the Ravens organization would love to have Isaiah Likely up and active week 1 to start the season versus, trying to play preseason week 1 for just a snap or a series or 2. So I hope that he gets better, a speedy recovery to the former Chanticleer Isaiah Likely. He'll be back on the field in no time making plays, and I think that this can be a big year for the big man. And finally, we're going to talk a little bit about Trey Hendrickson. Another report comes out. I just recently did a video on Trey Hendrickson and, the contract dispute. And, I was very vocal about the Cincinnati Bengals paying Trey Hendrickson because they don't really have anybody else. Yes, you just signed Shamar Stewart, your rookie, but you don't know what he can do on an NFL level. You do know, however, what Trey Hendrickson can indeed do. He gave you back-to-back years of 17.5 sacks. He was the sack leader last season, and he's looking for a deal. He's only supposed to get about $16 million, and that's chump change compared to his counterparts, guys like Myles Garrett, who's getting $40 million, TJ Watt, who is getting 41, Danielle Hunters, who's getting 35 for 1 year. Trey Hendrickson wants his bread. But you can tell maybe things are starting to smooth over between organization and Hendrickson. He decided that he was going to start the training camp process away from the team in Florida, but he is deciding to come back to take part in Bengals training camp, which tells me that maybe the talks are starting to heat up a little bit, and maybe they're much closer than they were originally at the beginning of this whole offseason process. I just hope that Trey Hendrickson gets his bread. I just hope that Trey Hendrickson gets what he deserves, man, because You're not going to find too many guys at the defensive end position that is going to give you that type of production. And Trey Hendrickson, he leaves it out on the field. He gives you everything that he has. He's a very passionate guy. And, he loves to play football. And not too many players come around like Trey Hendrickson. So I just think that it's in the best interest of both parties to go ahead and get this situation resolved. I understand that you got Joe Burrow on the books. I understand that you got Jamar Chase and T. Higgins on the books. I get all that. But at the same time, these guys are explosive as an offensive unit, yes. But how are you going to be able to get the quarterback on the ground on the defensive side of football, generate turnovers? You need a cornerstone player. You need an anchor in Trey Hendrickson. I'm just glad that he's going back to camp. Just tells me that maybe a contract is in the future for the big man.